Well, good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the only unapologetically progressive Sunday morning talk show for the Hoosier State. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I am broadcasting from Bloomington, and I've got a fantastic panel joining me here this morning on the show. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to get into that here shortly. First, a little bit of housekeeping. Please, I ask you to subscribe over at whosleft.us. That's where you can find everything we've ever done, our entire archive, video, audio, and print, all the good stuff. Would appreciate a paid subscription over there if you can. It's only $5 a month or $50 for the whole year to help us keep this project going. If you can, I know it's the holiday season and budgets are tight, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But if you can help us out with a paid subscription, we would greatly appreciate that. But even if you can't, we would appreciate a follow on social media. I've conveniently got all of our handles listed right there on the screen. And if you're listening, we are at whosleft.us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. The handle is just at Who's Left on all the rest. All right, I think that covers us. Let's end this shameless promotion and welcome in our fantastic guests this afternoon. And by afternoon, I mean morning. Very sorry. It was a late night last night. First, let's welcome our good friend, Derrick Holder, back to the show. Derrick,
hello,
welcome.
hello. Great to be
Good
back
to have
as
you.
always.
Love having you here. Before we get started, let me give you an opportunity to shamelessly promote yourself as well. Tell the folks where they can find you.
Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at Hold 'em Accountable. All my links are on my Facebook. But yeah, trying to do some great things over on Hold 'em Accountable.
And you really are. You're doing some great interviews and some good deep dive stuff too.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, let's also welcome to the show another returning guest, our good friend from Columbus. There is Ross Thomas. Ross, welcome.
Hey, good morning. And it is afternoon somewhere, I think. So, you got that partially right.
Good afternoon, Mid-Atlantic. Yeah.
Good to see you. Good to see everybody.
Hey, I gave Derrick an opportunity to promote himself. How about you promote yourself?
Well, I am the Bartholomew County Democratic Chairman. You can find me at Democratic headquarters in Columbus. You can also find us at barthdems.org. So if you're in Columbus or around Columbus, want to get involved in Democratic politics, come see me. Got a place for you.
All right. Fantastic. Good to have you back here, Ross. And listen, not to diminish you two gentlemen, but our highlight guest today is Cinde Wirth. We got a federal candidate here. So welcome.
Good morning.
Cinde, you are running for Congress in Indiana's 6th Congressional District. I think it might change next week.
It may. At the moment, with the current map they have proposed, I'm still running for the 6th district. If our maps, the way they stand, the way they've been since they introduced them the last redistricting, I will be in Indiana, running for Indiana 6th. So.
And we'll talk about the map shenanigans for a good chunk of the show here today. And I'm interested to hear your take on that, how it affects your campaign. But in the meantime, shamelessly promote your campaign for a minute.
So I am Wirth for Congress, Wirth number 4, Wirth with the W-I-R-T-H. You can find me on most social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It's either Cinde Wirth or Wirth for Congress. And we're on Blue Sky, we're on X. I think X is still C Wirth for Congress. But again, my mother made me spell my first name weird, and then I married my husband, who I have to spell that name for everyone too. So.
Very good. Listen, we love a good, unique spelling around here. It allows you to stand out, So listen, let's go ahead and jump in, and I want to start with our Indiana news today. And before we get to the news, a real quick sports story. We don't do these around here a lot, but how about them Hoosiers? Last night, Indiana football defeated Ohio State for our first Big Ten football championship in a long time. The final score was 13-10. This is the first Hoosiers win over the Buckeyes since 1988, our first Big Ten title since 1967, and our first outright conference title since 1945. As an IU grad, as an IU fan, I am excited and also discombobulated. I don't know what to do with myself as the fan of a football school these days. So congratulations, Hoosiers. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the college football playoff, where you are likely to be the number 1 seed when the brackets are announced, I want to say, later today. So, listen, that was fun, good times, but let's get into the meat of what we do around here and jump into the news. So, this week, a Marion County court heard the final arguments in a case alleging the state's near-total abortion ban violates the religious freedom of Hoosiers whose faith compels them to terminate pregnancies that endanger the life of the mother. ACLU Indiana represented the plaintiffs in this case, while the Attorney General's office defended the state's medical licensing board and other defendants. The underlying lawsuit was filed in September of 2022, right after this abortion ban was passed. It claims that the ban imposes a substantial burden on the religious practice of a particular group of plaintiffs whose faiths permit or even require abortion under circumstances broader than those allowed by the statute. The ACLU asked the court to convert a preliminary injunction into a permanent injunction, protecting the remaining individual plaintiffs. These are currently 2 anonymous women of different faiths, as well as a certified class, Hoosier Jews for Choice, ensuring that the state cannot enforce the abortion ban against them in ways that conflict with their sincerely held religious beliefs. Now, Ross, this is a legal case, so I'm glad to have an attorney here. I want to get your legal mind to weigh in on this. Do you think this is going to stand? Was this a good way for the plaintiffs to challenge this law? What do you think?
Well, I think you have 2 questions. I mean, the first is, should it? And the second is, will it? Which in this day and age are not necessarily the same thing. It's really interesting to go back and look at RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, that was originally a federal law that was put into place specifically to protect minority religions, and most specifically the use of peyote by Native American tribes, that they were being busted by the feds for their religious practices. And so the Congress, wanting to help this religious minority, created RFRA. Of course, it was then hijacked both at the federal level and the state level. I mean, the only people who ever get discriminated against are evangelical Christians. So obviously the purpose now of RFRA is to protect the downtrodden evangelical Christians, which should really have a hard time. So this really goes back, in my opinion, to the original intent of Religious Freedom Restoration Act, to protect the minority from the majority. I think if you're going to be honest, if you're going to follow the letter of the law, it should be granted. But once politics enters into it, and believe me, unfortunately, politics enters into appellate decisions more than we would like to think. I think it would be interesting, and it's also ultimately a federal question, which could even ultimately be overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. So it will be interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised to see them win at the trial court level. They should. You know, the law seems pretty clear there. But again, it's going to be a political decision, as so many of these things are.
Cinde, it would be wrong of me to bring up this case and not ask a woman her opinion on it.
I was really excited when they filed the case, and as somebody who has had to have medical care during a pregnancy, early on, and I was not able to access that care because we had major storms in our community that knocked out the power to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
I've been through a situation where, I'm dealing with the loss of a pregnancy on my own. Until 2022, when that law was passed, I think that was my 53rd birthday that happened. Every storm we had, I would think about women who might have to go through what I went through, because it was harrowing. I mean, it was so. Now it's not just because of a natural disaster or a storm or something else. It is everyday life for women. And it's unconscionable that we're in this position. So I'm very excited by this lawsuit. I've been watching it. I've been keeping my fingers crossed that it will hold and maybe change the way our legislators look at the issue, because it's really stripping women of their autonomy, their bodily autonomy, and that's really the heart of it. So in any way that we can get back to that and get it back to that bodily autonomy question and whose it is, I think is where we need to be.
Yeah. Derrick, listen, whatever comes of this case, I think brilliant use of the Republicans' own sort of toolbox, right? I mean, the RFRA in Indiana that was passed, that was a Mike Pence job, right?
Mhm.
And I remember it was very unpopular at the time, and they still rammed it through, of course. But wouldn't it be ironic if the people of the state of Indiana used Mike Pence's tool to re-legalize abortion?
I think it would be awesome. Pretty much going, hey, it came back and bit you in the backside. That's the best way that we can get back at some of these, is show them how crazy the law was to begin with.
Yeah, it really is. Again, I think ironic is the total word, and it may bite them in the ass. And listen, this is not the only Republican decision that they've made in our state the last several years that could come back to bite them in the ass. Stick a pin in that. We'll talk about that more with this redistricting question in a little bit. But another thing I wanted to talk about this week. So we got footage released from an October incident involving the Indianapolis Police Department. Now, 36-year-old Cartonio McBride was wanted on multiple warrants and has since been charged with over 10 counts of child sexual abuse. So keep that in mind. If these charges are proven true, not a good guy, but that's a big if, and there's a process, right? So footage shows McBride following officers' instructions to walk toward them, his hands up the whole time. Then, when told he was about to be tased, McBride turns around to run while holding his pants. Now, a detective issued the directive to tase the suspect, and a stun gun was deployed, but another officer fired a bullet. And while on the ground, McBride, again, it appeared to be he's pulling up his shorts to run when police fired 5 more shots. An investigation determined that the suspect was unarmed, and all 3 officers that fired shots have been placed on administrative leave as per IMPD policy. Cinde, I'm going to start with you on this one. IMPD's been on a bit of a tear lately. I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the city, but they just shot a guy in Franklin last week or the week before, and we talked about it on this show. What's going on up there?
Well, I mean, number one, I have a family member in law enforcement, and I worry about my cousin every day. Indiana has removed all restrictions on gun ownership. We are where the other states around us, especially Chicago, go to find weapons and guns. And it's not really a surprise that when law enforcement encounters a person, and I'm not defending them by any stretch of the imagination, they would be afraid of what they're going to find. And our lawmakers have, in Indianapolis, our state and state representatives and state senators have made the culture in Indiana where we don't know who is carrying a weapon or not. And I think that's an important piece of this to remember. But I've also read a little bit about this in that some of the charges that he faced came after this happened. And again, I'm not an attorney. I'm just, reading things on the news. So I think it is just a really awful time, number one, to be a person who is suspected of anything in Indiana if you're dealing with law enforcement, especially if you do not happen to be white. And I also think that, if you're a law enforcement person, you are really worried about your own safety, maybe a little, it's very dangerous to be out there in any case that way. So I think it is a very difficult situation, but I think it all comes back to how many weapons we have on our streets in Indiana because of the laws that we have put into place that allow those without essentially any regulation.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it from that angle, right? Like Republicans are the, we support our law enforcement party, but they're also the, hey, let's get a bunch of guns on the streets party. And that, puts law enforcement in a tricky place. Derrick, you just did a deep dive on guns recently, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Tell me, what do you think? I hadn't thought of that angle that Cinde brought up.
Right now, especially, all across the country, we're in a culture where guns are an identity to people now. Like, I'm a gun owner, so that means I check these boxes. And if you ever try to take my guns away, you're taking my personality away. Which, we have to get away from that mentality, but it is shoved at us from every angle. From, NRA a little less now, but NRA, from movies, from music. It's always gun culture. And I get it. We're the USA. Citizen soldiers is what won us our independence and all of that. We have the Second Amendment that guarantees our right. But guns are a tool. They are not a personality trait. And we have to remember that guns are a tool to be used in the proper way and at a proper time.
Listen, I identify with my table saw, Derrick. You will try it from my cold, dead hands. Ross, listen, I want to ask you, from a legal standpoint, listen, might be a bad guy. Prove it. Take him to court. Prove it. You don't just shoot him.
Well, I think you see, look, this is not an isolated incident in Indianapolis or anywhere in the country. What tends to happen is one of these things happens. Obviously, George Floyd, the most famous of examples, people get really upset. And then there is pushback from law enforcement and people who are afraid. And all of a sudden, it's not a problem anymore until the next one comes along. And that tends to be the cycle that repeats again and again and again. Look, I will tell you, it's a problem with police culture. It is a problem with police culture. And that is not, we all need police. So you get folks who support the police say, well, if you challenge anything that we do, you must hate the police, which is ridiculous. We all need the police. We all appreciate the police, but we don't appreciate bad police work. And it's not a few bad apples. We've seen that again and again and again. It is the culture that they have. Cinde said it. They're afraid of what they will find. So many of our police officers are afraid when they are out on the streets, and they shouldn't be afraid, and they shouldn't act out of fear. They should act out of training. Why are you threatening to tase someone in the first place who is cooperating with you? Why is escalation your first line of defense? De-escalation should be the role. But unfortunately, most of our police officers are trained to escalate. And most of our police officers are trained that, respect my authority. That's how I take control of the situation, is Eric Cartman, right? Respect my authority. It's funny because it's true. As Homer Simpson says, to mix my cartoons. But look, it's a real problem. And when you look at what's happening in the Caribbean, with our country saying we're going to blow people up without any due process, we can see, look, if that becomes the norm in international waters, it's not much of a stretch to say that becomes the norm on the streets of Indianapolis. We shoot first and ask questions later. And look, yeah, bad guy, good guy, I don't care. I've known a lot of people who were accused of being bad guys who turned out that they weren't. And I've also known a lot of really bad guys that deserved due process, because everybody does. And when the police become the judge, jury, and executioner, we live in more of a police state than we live in now. So people need to see the real world effects of lawlessness by the government. It is a real threat. But I would just like to see, our police forces really look at their jobs differently, really look at themselves as part of the community and not as an occupying force, which unfortunately sometimes they do.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I unfortunately also need to move on and can't spend a whole lot more time on this one because we've got some other small men in this state who like to impose their will on the rest of us. And let's look at Attorney General Todd Rokita and Secretary of State Diego Morales. Now, on Wednesday, they announced that along with Republican officials in 3 other states had settled a lawsuit which forced the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to verify the citizenship of 585,000 plus Hoosier voters. As a part of this announcement, the pair announced the review had found 165 non-citizens registered to vote and a whopping 21 cases of non-citizens having cast ballots in recent elections. Now, they didn't say which elections and if some of these people were voting in multiple elections or what. Not a lot of specifics on this, but Rokita says, quote, "From day one, many individuals dismissed our work as a witch hunt, but the facts speak for themselves. Non-citizen voting is real here in our state, and even one illegal ballot undermines the trust we are told to have in our election processes." Too many S's in there. "And even the republic itself." End quote. Under the agreement, which also included Florida, Iowa, and Ohio, DHS is required to continue its development of a program capable of scanning millions of state voter records for instances of non-citizen registered voters. Derrick, I'm going to start this one with you. Hey, 21 non-citizen voters. They got them. They've rooted out voter fraud. That wouldn't have even swung a race for dog catcher, Derrick.
I think the closest race we had with this was Tiffany Stoner, and it still want to flip that one. That's
if they were all voting in the same race, in the same precinct. This is statewide over the course of multiple elections.
Yeah, it's good that we got rid of some illegal voters, but did you have to go through that much of a witch hunt to find 21? It's like, how much money was spent to find 21 votes?
And, right, Did they root out illegal voters? Ross, is it a possibility that there's just like some paperwork got crossed here and these folks aren't even illegal voters? I mean, I know people who work in election offices, and their process says you are not getting by them, without the proper documentation.
Well, I think it's interesting, they supposedly found 165 non-citizens registered. Only 21 of them had ever voted. So that tells you that the majority of these people probably didn't know they were registered to vote. They probably registered to vote at the BMV or in some, at a fall festival, somebody with a barcode said, "Hey, why don't you register to vote?" So first of all, 165 is a ridiculously small number. It's a statistically invisible number. Number two, if only 21 of the 165 ever voted, that tells you that it probably was not an effort by many of those people to vote illegally. If you registered and never voted, you probably didn't know you were registered at all. It's ridiculous. Look, voter fraud nonsense has been around ever since Republicans decided they needed to cheat to win elections. And they've been pushing this narrative as ways to limit voting because they don't want working people to vote, because if working people vote, they lose, and they know it. So look, it's nonsense. Todd Rokita is a buffoon. He's the worst attorney general we've ever had, and that's a pretty low bar. And obviously, Diego Morales is a criminal. So, look, sue me, Diego, please.
Spicy.
Yeah. Look, it's sad. It's pathetic. And when you have to resort to, well, even one is one too many. When you have 21 out of 4,675,000 registered voters, give me a break. It's just business as usual. Let's cheat if we can.
Cinde, I'm concerned about all of the data scraping that's going on. For all of these 21 that they found, they dug through like 600,000 Hoosier voters data, and they're doing it in other states as well. What do you think? Are we vulnerable with that data being out there?
Absolutely. As far as them saying that this is a real problem, last night I saw Santa Claus and he said hello to me and told me Merry Christmas. So I think the definition of real is what we really need to look at. It's about undermining people's confidence and faith in elections. But the data scraping and the loss of privacy and the fact that we are currently living in a surveillance state is something that we need to recognize and elect people who want to put a stop to this. And that's the really important part here is acknowledging that we are living in a surveillance state. They are taking advantage of their own manufactured and created crises to undermine the public trust in the election process, which generally, there are safeguards in place for that. But the data scraping, which happens for a lot of reasons in a lot of things, and our data's been out there, but this is a gross misuse of our voter registration data, which we know that they're selling to surveillance technology companies.
Yeah. Everybody's watching us, but nobody's watching the children. So I saw this story from a tiny outlet called the Owen News down in Owen County. That's about 30 minutes from me here in Bloomington. And it highlights a problem that is widespread throughout the state. So a daycare center called Tiny Town Learning Academy closed this last week, marking another reduction in the available spots for childcare in Owen County. The YMCA their facility closed over the summer, meaning that since July, Owen County has lost 175 childcare spots, and in a small county, that is a lot. Tiny town proprietor Stephanie Freeman estimates that approximately 60% of childcare facilities in the state have closed over the last 3 months, and this is a downstream effect of cuts to Indiana's child care voucher program, which now has a wait list exceeding 30,000 kids, with no new vouchers being issued until at least 2027. But Governor Mike Braun has a solution. Bring your infant to work. Braun announced a pilot program allowing state workers to bring newborns to the office. This Family First Workplace initiative has already launched for staff in the governor's office, the Indiana State Department of Health, and the state personnel department. The governor's announcement followed an executive order issued earlier this year that expanded paid childbirth leave and paternal leave, as well as paid leave for state employees who experience a stillbirth or infant loss. This program is going to be limited to infants less than 6 months old, and participating employees must submit a written request in writing, complete a series of documents, including a participation agreement and waiver, a pediatrician clearance form, a supervisor sign-off, and a signature from coworkers who agree to serve as alternate care providers. I think, Ross, I'm back to you to start this one. Man, like, if this isn't a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, and it's only for a very small slice of people, like state workers, right?
It seems like a Saturday Night Live skit, honestly. It seems like the format for a Saturday Night Live skit. What's childcare? I'm bringing my infant to school or to work. I mean, it's comical if it weren't real. To just see the stupidity of the people who are running our state. And creating a problem and then trying to come up with a solution that is utterly ridiculous. I mean, the one thing that I noticed, not one of the forms you have to sign is a waiver, right? A waiver of liability. It kind of tells you that your program might be messed up if the people who participate have to agree not to sue you over it. So look, utterly ridiculous. Nobody should be bringing their newborn baby out in public. Much less, you shouldn't be taking your newborn to Walmart where it can catch all kinds of diseases, much less to the BMV or wherever you're going to be taking your child. It just points out how bankrupt they are. They don't have any ideas. They just want to cut taxes for rich people. And ultimately, if you cut all of the taxes, you don't have any more money to do anything. And well, look, you just bring your kid with you and shut up. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Among many, many, many stupid things. There's no defending this. It's laughable.
Cinde, now obviously this is a problem bigger than just Indiana. We don't handle childcare particularly well in this country in general. And it's good to have a federal candidate here, maybe ask about this. But should we be doing something at a grander scale on the federal level with child care in this country, with elder care? I myself am a fan of a federal jobs guarantee, and think that things like child care and elder care and things where we need bodies and a care economy, especially as AI is going to replace a lot of the busy work jobs. Isn't this something we should be doing at a large scale?
It absolutely is. Child care has gotten just extremely expensive, prohibitively expensive. It's more expensive to work for a lot of families enabled to, and in order to have childcare, then it would be not to work. I think that is also by design, to keep wages low. We know that Project 2025's goal is to keep women in their place, which is right there with childcare, elder care, dependent care, disabled persons care. And overwhelmingly, voters support child care programs, all of these paid caregiving programs. There are states who actually do this and do this really well, where family members are paid to care for their dependent family members, whether they're elderly, disabled, or younger. And this actually relieves the burden of people finding trustworthy care. And that's a big part of it is when you start creating programs and creating profit centers out of care, then the quality of care goes down. But I do think, yes, federally, we need to be addressing quality childcare programs, quality elder care programs. And, like I said, when this becomes a profit-making center and entity, the only winners are those who are lining their pockets. The people who need the care aren't the ones winning. And I think we need to be really cognizant of that as we go forward. And we see this with seniors in home care centers. I think it's $12,000 a month to house somebody in an elder care memory facility, and that's a national average, $12,000 a month. So,
and let me tell you, they're not getting the one-on-one care they need in those facilities. Right. There's just not enough bodies to go around, right? Just like there's not enough bodies to go around in these childcare facilities.
So it is a very complex problem. There's a number of childcare solutions I've seen proposed, everything from employer-based care to K-12 based care, which would extend that to, pre-K 12 based care. And I think we just need to start addressing things. And again, billionaires need to pay their taxes. When billionaires pay their taxes, the rest of us win.
Yes, 100%. Derrick, again, this is one of those things where American exceptionalism, right? Like, we can't learn our lessons from other countries. If we look around the world, they know how to take care of their kids, but we don't even have to look that far. Like in Indiana here, we could look to a state that is very demographically similar to ours in the Midwest. Minnesota has paid family leave.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a case of they want you to have kids, and they're doing everything in their power to make you have kids. But once the woman pops the kid out, you're on your freaking own. Yep. We're not going to help you with anything. With the CCDF, the child care voucher program, it not only hurts new parents who've never navigated this system before, it also hurts the families who open up their homes for foster children. So it harms foster parents as well. So that has driven more people out of the foster care system that were going to be foster parents, because they were at one time given a lifeline of, hey, you can still work and be foster parents, and we'll help with the daycare for our wards of the state. And, you have a home for them. Now that's going away. And it's hurting a lot of foster parent and foster care agencies.
Yeah, geez, man. It's like they want us desperate, so we're easy to control. Listen, our state doesn't just fail newborns and pre-K kids. They fail our students in the schools as well, and I want to talk about that. So, I saw this from the Indiana Capitol Chronicle. great publication. Everybody should subscribe to their stuff. I rely on them heavily. So school leaders statewide are warning that Senate Enrolled Act 1, which was passed earlier this spring, is negatively affecting school budgets across the state. 99% of districts are expecting this law to negatively affect their funding beyond 2025. Superintendents are citing staff cuts, delayed maintenance, and likelihood of other reductions. Suburban districts worry about their ability to accommodate growth without operational dollars. Rural districts are facing existential threats. At least one of them in the state has had the government come in and say, you're not going to exist anymore. And urban districts note their structural disadvantages with their dense populations, aging infrastructure, and a high concentration of high-need students. Well, let's focus on one of these rural districts. This from Chalkbeat, Indiana this week. Indianapolis Local Education Alliance advances a proposal diluting the power of the elected IPS school board. In a 7-2 vote on Wednesday, at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when many of the parents and educators could not participate, ILEA whittled 4 proposals down to the 2 least democratic. We talked about this last week. There were 4 proposals with varying degrees of democracy allowed. But of course, Mayor Hogsett and his appointed hatchet men and women chose the 2 least democratic. So now the Republican supermajority mandated the creation of this ILEA in the 2025 session. And the 2 choices they came up with this week are one called a Collaborative Compact Advisory Board, consisting of appointees from IPS, the mayor's office, and charter schools. The IPS and charters would report to this board, which would levy taxes and be the charter authorizer. The other model would create something called the Indianapolis Education Authority, giving the mayor's office more power. The mayor would appoint a secretary of education and a 9-member board, of which 4 of those, a minority, if I'm counting right, would be elected IPS board members. Now, IPS Superintendent Elisa Johnson voted against this and blasted the proposal. The ILEA will make their final recommendation to the state after a meeting on the 17th of this month, though the state could disregard it entirely. Cindy, I'm going to start with you here. Listen, with Democrats like Joe Hogsett, who needs Republicans? I'm going to say it.
So I was a public school teacher for 10 years. I just finished a PhD program in cultural and educational policy. And one of the basic tenets of public education in the United States is a statement basically sort of summing up the entire work of a man named Michael Apple from University of Wisconsin. And it is education is democracy and all curriculum is political. I mean, there's just there is nothing that you can use to argue with those statements. This is why I got into running for federal office, because of what I saw in my classroom, what was happening to teachers, what was happening to students. This is not the way public education was designed to work. And the issue that is driving a wedge into all of this and is the voucher program, because it is destabilizing public education at its very core by stripping away the money for public schools and redistributing that to private schools against the separation of church and state that we have through the use of charters, private schools, whatever they're wrapping those, and promoting white supremacy through the use of dismembering neighborhood schools. And that's really the core. This is all a reaction to Brown versus Board of Education, still to this day.
Straight line. Yeah.
And so, yes, we can bring all of these other things into it, and we can blame here and we can blame there and we can blame here. The root of it is we've got everybody held hostage to what is going on in this larger picture of this reaction still to Brown versus Board of Education, which we saw public schools, people take their kids out of public schools, and this is where vouchers and charter schools came from. And the fact that in 2025, we are still going through this is incredibly disheartening and maddening.
Yeah. Derrick, this thing like definitely exists at that uniquely American intersection of racism and greed, right? I mean, like Cinde was talking about earlier with the childcare, these charter schools are taking something that should be a public good and turning it into a financial tool. Yeah.
It's just another way of, I mean, hell, it's redlining. I mean, let's keep the inner city in the inner city, and let's make sure that, you know, the people that we want to achieve can go to the better schools. It's completely ridiculous. I am a product of the township system at Lawrence Township. There was busing in Lawrence Township when I went there. They would bus kids from the inner city part of Lawrence Township to Lawrence North, which is Castleton. Back then, it was, you know, different demographics than it is now. But, you know, when you had a bus even in Lawrence Township, that was ridiculous. That the demographics in that area kept a worse school system and a better school system. So it's back to the separate but equal. We're going all the way back to Plessy on this, that they are trying to keep the schools separate but equal. And equal is not equal, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, I mean, this is kind of the overall theme of what Republicans have been up to for the last 50 years in this country. They're just rewinding the progress of the 20th century and forget the 21st century. Yeah, they do. They want to go back to 1896. Ross, what about democracy? I don't know. Like, I thought we elected our school leaders.
There's another layer. Cindy's absolutely right. Derrick's absolutely right. The popular movement to private schools, to vouchers, is absolutely stemmed in racism. But you also have another layer of ultra rich people, particularly in the past, the Koch brothers, now Koch brother, but in the past.
Rest in hell, David Koch. Yeah.
Yeah. People like the Kochs and the Mercers, the ultra rich who saw an opportunity to dismantle, what they consider, the welfare state, by going to these folks and saying, hey, wouldn't you rather send your kids to an all-white private school? Well, yes, we would. But what their real goal is to not pay any taxes and basically end up not having any public schools, because they just see it as an expense, and they also see it as a way to educate the proletariat, which, well, absolutely, we don't want to do that. So it's a disgusting combination of racism and greed, as you put it. The ultimate goal of the people who are really calling the shots is just to not have a public education system. That's their ultimate goal. And unfortunately, you have people based on religious reasons or what they think are, and I think at some point there were some well-meaning people in the charter school movement. I think there were. Hey, we need to innovate. We need to whatever. But they were being manipulated and used. And ultimately, we know public schools are what a community needs to have a vibrant, educated population. These charter schools are a boondoggle. They always have been. These vouchers are a boondoggle. It's a method to take your money and give it to their friends. And then ultimately, if we bankrupt the schools, we can say, oh my God, public schools are so bad. Why do we even have public schools at all? Why don't we just forget the whole thing and cut our taxes even more? So people need to look at it. People need to stand up in their own communities who know that their public schools are vital, not just to children, but to the community, and stand up and reject this. Charter school money has no place in the Democratic Party. I will tell you that. Charter school money has no place in the Democratic Party, full stop.
100. I will link a counter proposal from Central Indiana DSA they put out in response to this hog set plan. I'll link that in the show notes, which you should be subscribing to anyway. Great recap of the week's news in Indiana and beyond at HoosLeft.us. Sorry about sneaking that other shameless self-promotion in there on you all. Hey, listen, so yeah, with this whole thing in Indianapolis with the public schools, the fix has been in the entire time, and that is not the only fix that has been in the Circle City this week. So, redistricting has dominated the news in the state, and once again, the fix has been in. So the Republicans in the supermajority this week unveiled a new congressional map at the prompting of President Trump. He's been pushing this for months. The map would divide Marion County, that's Indianapolis, into 4 districts. This is even worse than any of the mock maps we've seen in the months leading up to this. Now, House Speaker Todd Houston claims that California pushed him over the edge, saying that it had an impact on him seeing what California did and overwhelmingly voting for new maps there. That's his quote. Voting is the word I will emphasize in that quote. Hoosiers do not get that option. So Indy residents fear redistricting would mean the erasure of their voices. In the Indy Star, I'm going to quote from there. Many residents and Democrats say the proposed maps seem blatantly designed to strip power from communities of color that line the major east-west thoroughfare. The new map would fracture the voting bloc that since 2008 has backed Democratic U.S. Representative Andre Carson, drowning out diverse Marion County neighborhoods and with heavily white suburbs and far-flung rural areas extending to Indiana's borders with 3 other states. And I'm going to, let's see here. I'm going to bring up this lovely map, which is not the best from here, but you can see that's Marion County divided into parts of 4 districts. The 9th district would stretch from somewhere around the Speedway down to the Louisville suburbs. It is comically bad. Here's the whole map. All right, we'll zoom back in on Marion County there. But the way the lines are drawn are with near surgical precision to divide black voters and disperse them amongst these random districts. Textbook example of a gerrymandering practice known as cracking. Now, listen. Indianapolis is not the only target of this. Voters in Northwest Indiana, up in the 1st Congressional District, here's another graphic for you, would be diluted into a vast rural district that stretches from the Chicagoland area there, which has always been in a congressional district by itself. The new map would group Lake County voters with those in Pulaski, Stark, Marshall, Fulton, and all the way down in Wabash County, which is in like the north central part of the state. Elkhart has also been divided amongst 2 districts. Muncie has been divided amongst 2 districts, and the Lafayette area has also been divided amongst 2 districts. Now, listen, we talked about, and I'm going to bring our Marion County map back up here. We talked about how it was precision engineered to divide the black vote. But the author of these maps says that these were drawn for political performance, not for racial reasons. Now, people treated it like a gotcha, right? Oh, he said this is for political reasons. See? Well, he's engaging in deception here. He's being slick. In 2018, the Supreme Court ruled that partisan gerrymandering is perfectly fine, but racial gerrymandering violates Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, at least for now. And I've linked in the show notes a story in SCOTUS blog, which highlights that the court is currently weighing in on a case from Louisiana, which very well could gut the Voting Rights Act and allow southern states to draw out black voters and pick up some 18 to 20 new seats in Congress after they do so. Now, despite all this, like I said, the fix was in. The House GOP defeated Democratic amendment after Democratic amendment. The Democrats offered reimbursements for county clerks to cover costs like updating election processes and materials. They offered other amendments that would track spending to see how much this gerrymander would cost. One of these amendments would have required the Secretary of State to count the total amount of money and staff spent implementing the redistricting. Another would have urged lawmakers to study costs following 26th session. Another would have required public hearings in each congressional district. Another would have mandated that people or groups involved in drawing the maps be identified. We still don't know where they came from. Another proposed amendment to ban mid-census redistricting, which also deleted the bill's redistricting language, did receive support from 2 Republicans. Again, all of these were shot down, though, in short order. Friday, Turning Point USA, that's the late Charlie Kirk's organization, vowed to throw so much money at primarying Republicans who defect and vote against these maps in the Senate. Still, by Friday afternoon, these maps did pass the House on a 57-41 vote. 12 Republicans did join their Democratic colleagues in voting no. I've got the full list in the show notes. The state Senate will pick this thing up on Monday, where they will be met immediately with a bill from State Senator Fatty Cadora that would prohibit the General Assembly from conducting redistricting efforts at any point other than the first regular session following the census. All right, a lot there, and I want to get everybody's thoughts on redistricting. And I don't know where we left off, but I do want to start with Cinde here because, I mean, this directly affects you. You're out there campaigning in a district that you don't know will even exist in a couple weeks. How do you do that?
Well, people in Indiana, whether they're going to be in the 6th district or not, will still be people in Indiana who need representation. So I keep going with what the map stands now, in hopes that we have enough state senators who, I don't know if you saw my video from Wednesday, that I hauled out my teaching spine and offered it to anybody who needs to borrow it to stand strong. I wish I had it with me here today. It's actually in my car. But, you know, we elect lawmakers to represent people. And right now, people need to know that even if you're running for office, that you are there to support them, listen to them, and represent them. Hoosiers do not support this. Doesn't matter what political party they are a part of, or if they're not a part of either political party, that are like, they're not Republican, not Democrat, and they're independent, or they're non-voters. None of them want this. They understand that they're not being represented fairly. It is the most blatant racism that I have seen put in print since vouchers in charter schools.
But Cinde, it's purely for political performance.
Performance. I love that word. When that came out, I was like, yes, it is performance. It is a performance. That Section 2 of the voting rights, they are doing backflips and all kinds of twists to try to get around, making sure that no one holds them accountable to that. I think, though, that we all know what it really is, whether they're going to admit it or not. Everyone knows that. Why? Again, this is no different than what we're seeing in education. We're just seeing it everywhere now, and I think being afraid to call it what it is part of our issue. These are not fair maps, but people in Indiana, no matter where they live, deserve fair representation, and they deserve representation that is true to the form of what our system was set up with, as a person who is representing them, not a person who is ramming through their own personal beliefs.
Yeah, Derrick, let me ask you this. So we talked about this recently. We saw lots of threats and intimidation directed at Republican lawmakers by the right flank of their own party, by the extremists, by the wackos, by the nuts. And it hasn't stopped, since we've last visited this. Senator Mike Bohacek from the Michigan City area announced that his family was subject of a bomb threat after he announced that he would not support these maps. Senator Jean Lysing from Oldenburg said that her house was the target of a pipe bomb threat. And Senator Ron Alting of Lafayette said the bomb squad was called out to his former residence after receiving another bomb threat. To my knowledge, as this thing heads to the Senate this week, even with the threats and intimidation, they still don't have the votes. Are they going to cave? Is this going to work? Are these threats going to work?
So I have two responses to that. I have what I wish will happen and what could probably happen. What I wish would happen is they maintain their spine and do what their constituents want, and that is vote against this. What I believe will happen is they're going to be getting phone calls today, that's saying, if you do not vote to pass this, you will not be in office for much longer. You will be primaried by someone worse than you. And we will get this through no matter what, one way or another. It's a risk of political violence that is trying to shift this state into a more totalitarian direction.
It really is.
One-party rule.
And so, listen, at least one state senator says he's had enough. And Kyle Walker announced this week that he will not run for re-election. He's going to finish out his term, through 2026. His district in northeastern Indianapolis and the Fishers area in Hamilton County is close. He only won with 55% of the vote in 2022. So, maybe that's a pickup opportunity there. But Ross, I'm going to ask you, is this thing going to pass? And if it does, are they going to regret having done so? We talked about with the RFRA perhaps biting Republicans in the ass and being used to get results they would not approve. If they gerrymander these maps, if they break Indianapolis and send those voters out to other districts, do they risk losing more than they gain?
Yes, they do. So I don't think it's going to pass. And I think it is not going to pass because it is a bad map in the long run for Republicans. And I think they know it. The key is nobody wants to stand up and say, Trump is wrong. The Trump administration is wrong. This is a bad map it is a bad map for Republicans. Ultimately, look, if you have something that is as gerrymandered as it can be, and you try to gerrymander it more, you are going to, at a certain point, reverse engineer it. Right now, we have one guaranteed Democratic district in central Indiana. It is guaranteed to go Democratic. And we have 3 that are essentially almost guaranteed to go to Republicans. You ask any of those people, you ask Jefferson Shreve, would you rather have more Marion County voters in your district or less? Ask Cinde, would you rather have more Marion County voters in your district or less? The answer is more. So sure, in the short run, you might knock out Andre Carson, but you're basically trading 3 guaranteed districts for yourself, 1 guaranteed district for Democrats, and suddenly saying, well, now we've got 4 districts that are potentially in play. And one of the reasons that they're in play is because Marion County turnout is notoriously terrible. Why is it notoriously terrible? Well, because they don't have contested elections. When you have a gerrymandered congressional district that Andre Carson could win, standing on his head, he doesn't need to spend money. Marion County does not have a robust get out the vote operation. They don't need one, right? So primary people, and even in the primary system in Marion County, where you have slating and all of that, there's not a robust primary system there. So voter turnout is low. The other thing is just demographically, population-wise, Marion County dwarfs the rest of the state in population. 700,000 voters in Marion County. Johnson County, which is not exactly rural, 125,000 voters in Johnson County. Take yourself further out. You mentioned Wabash or Rushville, or pick one of those small counties. A single percentage point increase in Marion County can legitimately be equal to all of the voters in Brookville, right? So if you didn't have 50% turnout in Marion County, if you imagine people spending money, imagine people not knocking on doors, imagine increasing turnout to 75% in Marion County, it would wipe out most of the rest of the state. You see it, and also look, the donut counties are becoming more purple by the day because of demographic changes, because the changes in the electorate. You look at Atlanta. That they have more Democratic Congress people now, not because a bunch of former Republicans became Democrats. It's because the demographics changed in DeKalb County, in Cobb County, in those places that used to be white flight Republicans. They are now just part of Metro Atlanta, and they all vote blue. And there's a heck of a lot more of them there than there are in Macon. And there's a heck of a lot more people in Indianapolis than there are in Rushville. No offense to Rushville, right? So look, I'm somebody who says they're not going to vote for it because it's bad for them, and they know it's bad for them. And some of these folks who aren't running again, or are in, and let's be honest, our state legislature is ultimately gerrymandered. So most of them are in very safe districts. And look, Go ahead, primary Bray, see what happens. I mean, he's not worried about that. These people are not worried about those primaries, particularly in the donut counties. You know, those people are going to lose votes by voting for this thing, much more so than they're going to lose by going against Trump. So I think the primary threat is stupid. I think these folks are taking one for the team. I really do. I've said, bring it. You know, let's have competitive districts, because this does make competitive districts.
In a wave election, they really could screw themselves. I dare them. I dare them to go ahead and do these maps. But hey, listen. The maps are not the only thing going on in the State House this week. There were other bills filed, including one from Senator Mike Young of Indianapolis, who introduced a bill that would legalize the use of firing squads to carry out the death penalty in the state. Representative Craig Snow, a Republican of Warsaw, introduced a bill that would add a 14th casino license in the state in an effort to place a gaming establishment in the Fort Wayne market. Democrat Alex Burton of Evansville introduced a bill requiring new data centers to apply for a consumption permit for their water usage, subject to approval by the Indiana DNR. And State Representative Danny Lopez of Carmel filed a bill that would require a gubernatorial candidate to certify the name of a lieutenant governor candidate to run jointly with the candidate for governor. Derrick, that one seems like it's aimed directly at Micah Beckwith, doesn't it?
It does. It very much does. I never understood Indiana's process with the lieutenant governor, just because of hey, you could get someone who's completely a nutcase and completely antithetical to who you're running as governor.
Yeah. They
They
don't like the guy, do they? I mean, they were content to be quietly corrupt. And Micah has a habit of going ahead and saying the whole thing out loud. Cindy, what do you think about this data center law introduced by the Democrat down there in Evansville, Alex Burton? I mean, sounds like a good idea. Is this something that the state would actually let get through?
I think too much money changes hands with no ethics laws in Indiana for this to pass at the moment. I think this could change. I think that is a valid way to assess data centers. There are many other ways that data centers could develop their plans for data centers that are environmentally friendly and don't cause destruction. I think this is one step in that process of doing that. But the biggest step Indiana needs to take is implementing ethics laws at the state level for all elected officials. We don't currently have that, and I think that's a big root of a lot of our issues, because when you can pay people off under the table or allow them to have stock options for things like utility companies like Duke Energy, when our state senators and our state reps are incentivized by payoffs from stock options and campaign donations, things like that. I think that puts a stick in the side. But on a positive note, the casino in Shelbyville got their Teamsters contract Friday.
Saw that. Yes. Good. Yeah. Well, hey, let's stick on the gaming there. Ross, do we need another casino in this state?
Look, I think Cindy hits it, right on the head. It's shocking for people who aren't involved in Indiana politics to learn that there are no rules in terms of unlimited campaign contributions from individuals to Indiana candidates. Unlimited. And we've seen, and the gaming industry has been, people have gone to prison from the gaming industry because they have tried to take advantage of this loophole by bundling money, by basically going to the employees and saying, hey, guess what? you and your wife both need to send this money to the state legislature. So yeah, with all of the money involved, look, I don't know whether the state needs more or less casinos. The market, I guess, could dictate that if it was free and fair and not simply, the usual bribery scheme in our state legislature that we normally have. Cinde said it's under the table. Hell, most of it is right on top of the table. It's hard to say. These data centers are a perfect example of that. They provide no jobs. They take away resources. They make money for billionaires. And yet why would you as a politician say, I want this data center, which provides no jobs, which we're going to give a tax break for the next 50 years, and we're going to pay for all of the infrastructure ourselves? Seems like a horrible deal. Well, it is, unless I'm getting paid. And then it becomes a wonderful deal. So look, Cinde is right. As long as we have this corrupt campaign finance system in Indiana, you're going to see these kinds of ridiculous things again and again and again.
Yeah, be it the data centers, be it the utilities. Go ahead, Cinde. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. At the federal level, as a federal candidate, I have ethics laws I'm held to.
And really, like Ross was saying, the utilities, the data monopolies, the tech companies, the casinos, the gaming establishments. That's who really runs this state, right? It's not the people, it's the big donors, and overwhelmingly those donors own Republicans. So let's shift to our national stories, and now we're running a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and skip the briefs today. If anybody wants to see those, again, there's some good stuff. We're going to talk about Russia, Ukraine in there a little bit. Some Trump ramblings over various things. Hey, got to the FIFA Peace Prize at the World Cup draw this week. Again, notes, links in the show notes. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to our big U.S. topics this week, skipping those. And let's talk about the economy for a moment. And it's not great, Bob. So from MSN, we've got this story, delayed numbers from September. So inflation is still sticky. Mind you, we're only getting September data now in December because of the government shutdown. We're missing vast swaths of important information. But in September, the consumer price index rose 3%, continuing its climb since April, when it was only 2.3 before most tariffs took effect. According to the story, America remains heavily reliant on imports, particularly from retails, and tariffs have significantly impacted import prices. According to the Yale Budget Lab, the effective tariff rate is 16.8%, the highest since 1935. Notoriously not a great time for the economy. And, we're seeing it in other places as well. So from transport topics, manufacturing is slumping. U.S. factory activity shrank in November by the most in 4 months as orders weakened, indicating manufacturers are struggling to break free from an extended period of malaise. The survey suggests the nation's manufacturing base remains bogged down by trade policy uncertainty, again, and elevated production cost. The ISM index of prices paid for materials picked up for the first time in 5 months and is about 8 points higher than a year ago. Now, it's not just at the firm level. Individuals are feeling this crunch too. Small businesses cut 120,000 jobs in November, according to ADP, in a story from NBC News. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones had been expecting to see an increase of 40,000 jobs, and the Main Street Alliance, which consists of 30,000 small business owners, blamed Trump and Republicans for the difficult conditions, citing the trade war, healthcare cuts, and tax breaks for big corporations. Now, it's not just the small firms, right? From CBS News, employers have cut more than 1.1 million jobs through November, the most since 2020, when, notoriously there was something else going on, namely the pandemic. AI is leading to a loss of tech jobs. We had Doge, remember them, from this spring, trimmed government payrolls steeply by some 250,000 people. Yet, retail is doing okay, I guess. Now, retailers are expecting a weak holiday season, and seasonal work is at a 15-year low. However, over the Black Friday through Cyber Monday period, record amounts of money were spent on holiday shopping. I, however, will note a story in The Guardian points out that much of that spending may be driven by exorbitant spending by the wealthiest among us. So, Derrick, I haven't heard from you in a minute. How's the holiday shopping coming? Is it a lean Christmas this year at the Holder household?
Well, the reason why there were record profits for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, everything cost more. It's not people buying more stuff. Everything just freaking cost more. So people are buying less but spending more. I mean, I don't know how they can't wrap their freaking heads around this, but that's why we have record profits for those. It's because we have to pay more money for it. I mean, and then like my family, we do Hanukkah. So we do Hanukkah and Christmas combined because we're in a mixed religious family.
This is a Festivus household around here. Yeah.
I mean, we just, we have 2 holidays, but yeah, it's not going to be extravagant, but we have a 3-year-old who still believes in the magic of Christmas and a 16-year-old who just wants crap. She just got a new car, so she wants stuff for her car. So it's like, okay, get it. But everything just costs more.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, we're spending is high, right? Because prices are high. Cinde, now I'm hearing that employment is going down. We're seeing unemployment rise at the same time we're seeing inflation rise. And if I remember my 1970s history, that sounds like stagflation, does it not?
It does. The people that I'm talking to out in 11 counties, everybody's bracing for something. We know it's coming. I think a lot of people thought it was going to come, 2016 through 2020 before the pandemic. It didn't. I think it's really important to remember that the stock market is not the economy. It's part of it, but it is not that. So when those two things are conflated, I think it creates problem. People on the streets who are working 2 and 3 jobs to get by, they are having lean Christmases. They are not making big purchases. They're struggling with transportation and groceries and rent and utilities. Water prices in Indianapolis are a great example. When everything's privatized, costs go up. It doesn't serve the people. And I think we're seeing that, although when you take away the professionals who track this stuff at the federal level and you get rid of them, it's really easy to say whatever you want is going on and push out misinformation of whatever kind you desire to push out there. But the reality is the average person on the street is struggling, and they're still struggling with groceries, with rent, with transportation, healthcare. Healthcare premiums are everybody knows they're going up, and everybody just kind of got an idea of what it's going to be. And I know a lot of people who are like, oh, nope, I'm going to have to save for a surgery because I'm not going to be able to afford it. So no Christmas this year. This is our reality, and these are the things that we can fix with good policy and good elected people.
Ross, I mean, listen, a massive chunk of the economy is driven by consumer spending. If the people don't have any money to spend, how, I mean, the entire thing collapses, doesn't it?
Well, it depends on what you're selling. So part of the problem, and you touched on it, is the great wealth disparity in this country. One of the things that drives inflation, a factor of it, is that when you have a, as Bernie would say, the 1%, when we have these folks who are ultra wealthy
and billionaires, yes.
When we have the ultra wealthy, when we're in a gilded age where we have the ultra wealthy who have essentially unlimited spending, and then you have the rest of us who don't have unlimited spending in certain markets. Look, you can say I'm gonna price this shoe at a price point where everyone can afford it, or I'm going to price it 20 times higher where only a tiny percentage of people can afford it. But if they buy it, then I'm going to make as much money. So we see that in a lot of markets where prices, where essentially almost everybody's priced out of the market, but the retailer doesn't care because they have a market, because we have this great wealth disparity. And we see that in many, many things. The other thing that I think is important, Trump's version of NAFTA is still in place. USMC is still in place. Many of the products that we get from Mexico and Canada are exempt from tariffs. They are right now. Trump doesn't like to talk about that. He tries to talk about punishing Canada and whatever. Most of their products are exempt because of Trump's NAFTA, USMC. That is set to expire. Trump has rambled on about getting out of it or changing it or making it better, which is funny because he's a great negotiator, is the one who gave it to us. But I will tell you, look, if Trump's NAFTA goes away and we suddenly don't have all those exemptions, you're really going to see the effect of tariffs on prices, and it's going to double the price of a lot of goods, and particularly in the automotive sector, where many automobiles and certainly many automobile parts come from Canada and Mexico. It creates a cycle and a wave. So look, the worst is yet to come, but it's in the grand tradition of Republican administrations to destroy the economy. That's what they do. Only to have a Democrat come back the next time and save them. So, Trump is in a grand tradition of Republicans destroying our economy.
Every damn time, Ross, they have this unearned reputation as being good for the economy. And in the short term, they get that thing cooking to the point where it goes off the rails. And every time, like you said, Democrats have to come and clean up the mess. Now, Republicans, one of their scapegoats for the state of the economy is immigrants, and as such, they are turning up the pressure with more ICE raids this week, focusing on New Orleans and Minneapolis. Now, if you recall, Thanksgiving week, there was the very unfortunate shooting of a couple National Guard members in D.C. by a radicalized CIA-trained Afghan immigrant. Yet, Trump has focused his ire at Somalis, particularly in the Twin Cities, where where is the home of the largest Somali community in the world. Now, the president pivoted from criticizing the Afghan immigrants to Somali immigrants in a unhinged rant on Thanksgiving night. including directing a slur at Minnesota Governor Tim Walz for welcoming immigrants to his state. Now, it is not just the Somalis in the Twin Cities that have drawn Trump's ire. There is also a stepped-up immigration enforcement in New Orleans this week, something they're calling Operation Catahoula Crunch, aiming to make 5,000 arrests, a target that, according to the Associated Press, would require detaining more than just the worst of the worst, which is a term that Kristi Noem likes to use. The 5,000 number would surpass the number of arrests made during a 2-month enforcement blitz this fall in the Chicago area, a region with a much bigger immigrant population. And for the record, of those in Chicago that were arrested, only 15% had a criminal record. Outside of these two hotspots, we also saw this week an ICE agent pull a U.S. citizen out of a car in Florida as she's screaming, "I am a U.S. citizen." And we got from the Daily Mail in the UK a report, because we're not getting this in our country from our journalists. This Daily Mail report shows that ICE is hiring misfits not ready to tie their own laces, according to the article. So the Trump administration's push to hire 10,000 new deportation officers by year's end has spiraled into what insiders describe as a national embarrassment, with lax vetting and a signing bonus of up to $50,000, luring a wave of woefully unfit recruits. Just to get people in the door, the minimum age has been lowered from 21 to 18, and the maximum age has been raised from 40 to 65. So they are taking anybody and still having a hard time filling these spots, according to a quoted source in this article from Department of Homeland Security. Quote, "We have people failing open book tests, and we have folks that can barely read or write." Recruits were even discovered to have tattoos associated with gangs and white supremacist organizations when they stripped off their shirts during workouts, and reports include incidents of violence, disruptive behavior, and allegations of sexual misconduct on campus where they're being trained to be ICE officers. They can't even wait until they get out to the community to harass people. But into this void steps our hero, the diminutive Sabrina Carpenter, who this week spoke out against ICE after they used one of her songs in a video. The song was Juno, and it repeats a lyric, "Have you ever tried this one?" referencing different, let's say, positions. The DHS was using it to reference, trying different ways to, dehumanize human beings. And after she criticized this, saying, quote, "This video is evil and disgusting. Do not ever involve me or my music to benefit your inhumane agenda," they doubled down Friday night, posting another ICE video with one of her clips from a recent Saturday Night Live appearance. Now, listen, we talk about Sabrina Carpenter to goose the algorithm here, but this thing is disgusting on all accounts. I don't even know where to begin. Cindy, I'm going to ask you this because I've got a federal candidate here, and I will say every federal candidate needs to be able to say the words "abolish ICE" out of their mouths. Can you say those words?
We need to abolish ICE.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. At this point, if you have a pulse and a need to make your dreams of dehumanizing people and othering people true, then you're their candidate. And I think the root of fascism is dehumanization and othering of peoples to drive wedges between community. And it's more important now than ever that we come together as community. And it is really heartening to see people. I think it was Chicago, where people were just walking down the street. Maybe it was New York, walking down the street, going about their daily business, and they saw an ICE raid in process, and like the whole group of people that weren't together, it wasn't an organized protest, just naturally came together to start videoing and ran them off. And we're seeing this across the country where a community is taking over and saying, this is not okay. Due process is absent from this entire ICE set of protocols, and due process is what we are built on. But when we have this othering and dehumanization that takes place, that's where fascism takes root and takes over, and we very soon end up in a position that we helped dismantle in World War II in across Europe.
Yeah, and Cindy mentioned important points, and Ross, I'm going to come back to you on this again because we're talking about due process. And again, I'm not a lawyer, you are, but I'm looking at this stuff from the outside, and I'm like, man, all of this has to be illegal. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things.
Yeah, well, look, it's absolutely illegal. It's absolutely illegal by design. Look, the people who are putting this in place want it to be a shock and awe, fear, brute force. They want to put people in fear. They want to demonize democratic cities. There is an agenda here that is political. It has based nothing at all on law enforcement. We have seen in Indiana, and I can tell you of specific cases where people charged with serious crimes have been, who are also undocumented, have been scooped up by ICE without any collaboration with the local prosecutor or the local police, who have literally come in and swept up someone who the prosecutor wants to hold accountable for their crimes. And well, he's illegal. ICE swept in, they grabbed the guy. He's back in a foreign country before he ever faces justice. So in that sense, in a very bizarre way, I mean, they're essentially helping some criminals who would much rather go back to their home country than face 20 or 30 years in prison for a crime they committed here. It just shows that they don't have a plan. They don't have a process in place other than a show of force. It is not any different than the brown shirts were for Hitler. It is not any different. It is the only difference is they are part of the government from jump. And they are designed to go into these communities without any concern for due process. And it dovetails a bit with what we were talking about earlier about police culture, in that, look, if the people at the top condone bad behavior, if you get promoted because you have bad behavior, if the culture of ICE is fascist, guess what? You're going to hire fascists, and they're going to act in a fascist way. And nobody should look at it and say, "Oh boy, these guys have really gone off the rails." They've somehow gone against. No, they're doing exactly what the president of the United States wants them to do. It's disgraceful.
Yeah, and listen, Derrick, we're going to talk about specifically military matters here in a second, related to Pete Hegseth, but again, it's the same thing, whether it's at the local level. Police shoot first, ask questions later. These ICE guys round people up, ask questions later, if at all, and our Department of Defense bombing folks out of the Caribbean, asking questions later. It sounds like a culture of fascism just permeating into every level of our society, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. We're becoming very much a "do you have your papers" society. I mean, ICE is the SS. It's just call a spade a spade. Kristi Noem is Himmler. And then say what you will about the great orange turd. So, yeah, there are enough people in this country to fight back, and we will do it.
You know what? And I think we're gonna wrap a bow on that thing at the end and bring it full circle here. But first, let's talk about one of these cases I brought up. You know, one of our leading fascists, perhaps the poster boy for American fascism, because of his, you know, stunning good looks with his shirt off and his Nazi tattoos, and that is our styled Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who is drawing ire from all sides of the political spectrum over the last couple weeks. So, you know, we've talked in this space about these strikes on these alleged drug boats in the Caribbean, and again, you know, due process, prove that these folks are drug traffickers before we bomb them. But it turns out last week we heard that Hegseth personally ordered all aboard the first boat that they struck to be killed. And when the first strike did not do so, we went back and did something called a double tap in military parlance, and they struck the survivors who were clinging to the wreckage of the boat, which is a war crime. Now, this week, Hegseth threw the admiral under his direct supervision under a bus, saying that the Navy leader ordered the boat survivors killed, and it totally wasn't on him. So Hegseth made clear that he believes Admiral Mitch Bradley is the man responsible for a U.S. attack on the survivors of a boat bombing in the Caribbean on September 2nd. According to the Washington Post, Hegseth ordered everyone on board killed. Like I said, after the first strike, 2 survivors remained, and the Post said Bradley deemed the survivors valid targets and ordered that Hegseth's directive be carried out. Hegseth, for his part, says he would have made the same call on that boat strike. But Hegseth's troubles do not end on that boat in the Caribbean, because if you remember, there was a scandal involving a strike on Yemen earlier this year in which Hegseth leaked the details in a Signal chat, which included a journalist. And a Pentagon watchdog this week concluded that Hegseth risked exposing sensitive information that could have endangered U.S. troops when he relayed this information on the Signal messaging app, which, you know, is a secure app, but is commercially available. And again, protocol, process. In the DoD, there are ways you do things, and using Signal chats is not one of them. The Defense Department's Inspector General concluded that the information Hegseth put in Signal had been properly classified by Central Command prior to the Secretary sharing the information with his colleagues and his wife. But because the information was so sensitive and was putting troops in danger if it fell into enemy hands, the IG concluded it should not have been relayed using the commercial app, according to people familiar with the case. The sources said that, according to the report, Hegseth also refused to sit down for an interview as part of this investigation. And look, all of this going back to these boats in the Caribbean, the whole reason they give for these strikes is that we're cracking down on drug traffickers, right? We're going to get those bad guys moving this cocaine and this fentanyl into our country. Oh, wait, I thought we were tough on drug traffickers, because this week, President Trump pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez for his U.S. drug trafficking conviction. The president of Honduras from 2014 until 2022, Hernandez was convicted and sentenced last year to 45 years in prison and given an $8 million fine by a U.S. judge for drug trafficking offenses. Now, Hernandez insists he was innocent, and this is a rigged political witch hunt. But both Republican and Democratic members of Congress have criticized Trump's decision to pardon someone with a drug trafficking conviction when his administration has been so focused on disrupting drug trafficking in Latin America. Now, Derrick, apparently this guy Hernandez was responsible for like a mountain of cocaine coming into this
200
country.
tons. 200 tons of cocaine.
Not my sort of thing, but sounds like a fun weekend, according to some people I know. Listen, what gives? It is patently insane how corrupt these people are when they do things like this. Now,
Can we talk about how Trump thanked the countries that are exporting cocaine to us? Yeah, during an interview, he thanked them and said he thinks it's great. So I don't know what tests this jackass is doing, but yeah, he's acing all of them. And then back to Heg's breath. Did you see that his placard during a cabinet meeting had a double S on the secretary part?
oh, but surely that is a typo, Derrick.
Yeah.
They would never.
So, yeah, I mean, kill them all. Okay. Well, don't we have the duty, per international law, to arrest the people that were on the boats?
We
And
managed to
bring
arrest
them
and
to-
try this Hernandez guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're on drugs that I don't think the commander in dumbassness has gotten the memo on that cocaine is bad. But no, let's go against Tylenol. That's the problem.
Right. Yeah, we got to make sure we're cracking down on the right drugs. Cinde, listen, when you win your race in 2026, if Mr. Hegseth is still the Secretary of Defense, I would like to see you bring him before a House committee and give him a good grilling. What would you like to say to Mr. Hegseth?
Well, first of all, I think that when the normal protocol of having people with competence and experience staffing positions at the level that they should be staffed, I think we need to make sure that that happens, and we don't have people who we take off of a morning news show running our Department of Defense. Secondly, I don't know if you guys know, I'm a Caribbean archaeologist. So I've spent a great deal of time professionally in the Caribbean on many islands. I know a lot of the landscape. I know a lot of what's been going on there for the last 25, 30 years. United Nations Convention on Law of the Seas, which I believe the U.S. has still not ratified because we don't ratify things like that. But we sort of loosely adhere to them. Prohibits the use of lethal force, bombings and those such things, military strikes. So we all know this is really about the oil in Venezuela. We all really know that this is just a ruse. And we all know that, yes, there are also fishermen out there. But there's a lot of drugs out there. We've been dealing with that for many, many decades. And we have ways to do that. And it's very effective. So I think they need to be held accountable as war criminals. I think if it needs to go to The Hague, it needs to go to The Hague. And I think the U.S. needs to stand behind that. And I think our federal legislators need to, and again, I'll bring my spine. They can borrow it if they want. We really need to make sure that we hold people accountable, because we are right back there in 1940s Europe. Only now we're not the good guys.
Yeah, certainly, Ross. Again, we've talked about this in several of our stories here today. That it's process, it's rule of law, it's there's a way to do things. We have a way to do things. There are we've been intercepting drug boats in the Caribbean for decades now. There was a little show about it called Miami Vice.
Yeah, it didn't work in 1984, and it still doesn't work now. Look, part of the problem is the war on drugs is a failure. It's a dismal failure. We are not, as a drug policy matter, we're not going to win the war on drugs. We can blow up as many ships as we want. As long as there is a demand, there is going to be a supply. So in that sense, it actually promotes drug trafficking, because the more dangerous it becomes, the more profit you can extract, and therefore have a greater incentive to even bring more. So the war on drugs is a dismal failure. It does not work. Interdiction does not work in the big picture. Now, that being said, talking about these things as war crimes, I think is also sort of, this is not a war. You can call it a war. You can say we're doing it. There's no war.
That just makes it murder. Yeah,
it's murder. It is murder. It is not a war. If we were at war, it would be a war crime. We are not at war. It is murder. I find it ridiculous, personally, when we talk about that how awful this second strike was. The first strike was murder. Okay. The second strike is people clinging to life, even in a war. If a combatant is clinging, waving, surrendering, it's a war crime to kill that person. But again, we are not at war. This is just a ridiculous use of force. Look, Cinde told us it's ultimately because Venezuela is not even a major drug exporting country.
Nope.
Colombia, Honduras, as we have seen, but their focus is on Venezuela because they don't like the Venezuelan government, which there's a lot not to like about the Venezuelan government, but it's their government, not ours. And ultimately it's because they have oil, and we want it. So all of it is disheartening. It is fascist. People should be outraged that there are people in our government as stupid as Pete Hegseth, and the people who followed his orders ought to be, and I personally believe will ultimately be held accountable for this. There's no defending it. There's no defending it as a legal matter, as a military matter. There's no defending it. You're just killing people indiscriminately. Where I come from, that's wrong.
Yeah, it's it runs against everything I think that we were taught growing up. All of us grew up in the post World War II era, where the U.S. was supposed to be the good guy, and we put things in place, international law, and we stood for certain things, and it's all been dismantled at this point. And listen, we weren't always super compliant and didn't hold ourselves to the standards that we had set, but now we're just like twirling mustache evil. We mentioned World War II It came up a couple times. Today is actually a big anniversary. It was 84 years ago on this date that Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, bringing the U.S. into World War II. And Derrick, as a Marine Corps veteran, I will let you have a couple words about Pearl Harbor.
I mean, yeah, it was a heinous attack. But 84 years ago, to put that into perspective, you might remember the Gettysburg Address when President Lincoln said 7 years ago, a score is 20 years. So Gettysburg to the American Revolution was 87 years. We're about the same distance from Pearl Harbor that the Revolution was from the Civil War.
And if you look, it was about 80 some odd years between those two things. You're getting into something I like very much, and I highly recommend people read like a book called Generations or The Fourth Turning. This is by historians Strauss and Howe. I forget their exact names. Good stuff in there, but basically it talks about how, every 4 generations or so, the length of a very long human lifetime, as the people who fought the last big battle pass, we forget their lessons. Cinde, you were fortunate enough to know somebody. Yes. Cinde, you had a kind of an interesting Pearl Harbor tangent that you mentioned before we started today.
Right. I was in Eddie Bernice Johnson's office as a legislative fellow in 2018, 2019. And she was one of the proponents of getting Dory Miller the Congressional Medal of Honor. And he received the Navy Cross. In fact, I think he was the first African-American to receive the Navy Cross. She knew him. They were from the same hometown. They were both from Waco, Texas. So as a young girl, she told a story, one of their many stories, which were phenomenal, that when she was a young girl, they went door to door to collect money to get to him for, and I don't remember what it was. And then he came back to their hometown on leave, and they presented him with whatever it was they'd collected this money for. So it was very near and dear to her heart because he was not allowed to receive that Congressional Medal of Honor because of his race. And being part of that and watching her push that through as a personal mission, I think in one of her later interviews before she passed away a couple of years ago, she said that she would keep pushing for this until the day she died. And indeed she did. I think now Congressman Maffume has taken up the mantle of this, but it was initially started by Debbie Dingell's father-in-law, John Dingell's father from Michigan. So this has been going on for a long time. And I wasn't part of a congressional office when Biden was in his term. So I don't know what happened and why Biden didn't do that. I was kind of expecting it, which I would imagine they might have been expecting that to happen too. But I'm not really sure what happened there. But I think it is something that does need to be done. And having been a part of helping push some of this legislation through, it is something that I am very aware of. But I think the movie, Derrick, you'll have to tell me the name of the movie because I'm not very good with names of movies, that portrayed his character, I think brought a lot of attention to him. And I think we've kind of forgotten that.
Yeah, the movie was Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what he did was, if you don't know the story, Dory Miller, he was a cook, a messman. And when his command superior was injured, helped get him to safety and took over a machine gun, which he was not allowed to actually run, and shot down planes. And I think he was on the, I don't remember what ship he was on. I'm not a military history person, but I do know, I think he might've been on the West Virginia. If that was, I think that was one of those that was there. But it really is an inspiring story of courage and bravery and, things that people do because they're good humans And we really need to be highlighting those stories today, because we're seeing so many things where we're highlighting stories where they're not good humans.
Yeah, certainly. Ross, do you have any tangential stories related to Pearl Harbor or even the war in general?
Well, I think it is important to remember that we had a segregated military throughout World War II, and up to that time, it was President Truman, good Democrat, after the war, who, much to the chagrin of a lot of people in charge, insisted that we desegregate the military, which seems like strategically seems like a no-brainer, right? Where you would want your best forces, regardless of race, to be in the best possible spot. But we still operated with a segregated military that would have a soldier be a cook rather than a fighter because of his race and because of stereotypes. We can't forget. Again, it's a long time ago in one sense, but it's not that long ago in the big scheme of the world to remember that during this time, we were still operating. I guess in all fairness, we can thank Woodrow Wilson, a particularly bad Democrat, who insisted on resegregating everything in our government. But I think it is a story like that, and a story of that man's bravery, reminds us how stupid racism is in every aspect of what we do.
Those soldiers, who gave their lives in Pearl Harbor and through the course of the war, my grandparents' generation, they did not fight and die to defeat fascism for it to rear its head in our country a lifetime later. So it is on us and our generation to stop this current iteration. Listen, we are at 2 hours, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. But first, I want to give each of you an opportunity again to one more time shamelessly promote yourself. And this time I'm going to go backwards and start with you, Ross.
Well, what people need to do, if they're watching a program like this and they're saying, boy, this has me fired up, I can't believe all these things that are going on. We defeat these things through electoral politics. We defeat fascism through electoral politics. So get involved in politics. If you're somebody that says, I hate this, but I hate politics, well, listen, you got to start loving politics. You got to get involved. So if you're where I live in Bartholomew County, Indiana, and you want to get involved, barthdems.org. We need your help. Our candidates need your help. Cinde Wirth needs your help. Get in the game.
Yep. You might not be into politics, but politics is into you. Derrick, how about you?
Find me on all the socials at Hold 'em Accountable, and be ready for a big announcement coming out in the next month. That's all I have to say.
Indeed. And finally, Cinde, I'll give you the last word here today.
Yeah, get involved. We can always use help in our campaign. It's important to remember that federal candidates are restricted financially. So we need all of those small dollar donations coming directly to us, not to the state party, not to the county parties. We need them coming directly to us, because that's the only way that we benefit from your donation, is if it's made directly to us. But you can find us at worthforcongress.com, WIRTH. Get involved. Like you said, if you don't like politics, politics is affecting you. When you grocery shop, when you send your kids to school, when you cash that Social Security check, it affects you. So reach out. We would love to have you on board.
Very good. Well said, Cinde. Well said, each of you. Thank you all for joining me. Once again, I ask folks to please subscribe at whosleft.us and follow on the socials. That is my handle there as well. But in the meantime, on behalf of Derrick, Ross, and Cinde, my name is Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.